Hello and welcome to When They Popped. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Mary.
And today's episode is dedicated to an iconic television series, American Idol, the reality competition show that gave us some of the music industry's biggest names. As we all know, Kelly Clarkson, EGOT winner Jennifer Hudson, Carrie Underwood, Adam Lambert, Fantasia Barrino, and Clay Aiken, just to name a few. I don't know about you, but I will never forget that opening music and the iconic rounded blue logo with the cursive American Idol writing that was like glowing like a neon sign. That was like the earliest graphics I remember being like, wow, that looks really cool.
Wasn't it like guitars? It was like...
And then there was like a ooh,
Ooh.
Speaking of that clip, let us disclaim here right now that we do not own or claim to own any of the clips or performances in this episode. The purpose of these clips is for commentary and critique.
So this show had us all by the collective throats. So let's go all the way back to season 1 and recount our fondest memories.
Let's do it. And since then, it's worth noting, American Idol has spawned 345 Billboard chart topper songs.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy when we look back. So let's go back to where it all started. This really was not just another TV show. It was an experience. And it united Americans when we really needed it. It literally brought us together as a country. We were just months post 9/11 in June of 2002 when American Idol premiered. And it really rallied Americans to gather around their TVs, pick up their phones, and dial for their votes for one of these American superstar hopefuls that had these really wholesome backstories. I feel like this was a time where we all kind of wanted to hear some good news and be uplifted and come together. And American Idol was the secret sauce that did it for us. So what's interesting to me is that even though it's called American Idol, the show was actually an import from England. And this whole Idol format began just a year earlier in 2001 with the British TV series Pop Idol. And that show was in turn inspired by a New Zealand television competition called Pop Stars. So we go from Pop Stars to Pop Idol. So Nigel Lythgoe, he saw this version in Australia, Pop Stars, and helped bring it over to Britain, which would eventually become Pop Idol. Simon Fuller, who we all remember from those iconic opening credits, he is the creator of the Idol franchise. And they were really inspired by this Pop Stars, again, this New Zealand show format of having a panel of judges select singers to make it through this audition process. And he kind of Frankensteined this with other singing competition shows that were popular at the time, like Eurovision Song Contest. I believe they had a voting by telephone thematic to it that he added on to the Pop Stars format. He also wanted to add, the drama of the stars' backstory. So it's almost like part reality show, part singing competition. And the first adaptation of the Idol franchise when it, left the shores of Britain was to South Africa, which was kind of cool. And that show was just called Idols in 2002. So since then, Idol has become the world's most widely watched television franchise and one of the most successful entertainment formats. It's been adapted in over 56 regions around the world, and its various versions are broadcast to over 150 countries with a worldwide audience of 3.2 billion people. And if you think that's impressive, let me give you one more number that'll knock your socks off. The franchise has generated more than $2.5 billion in revenue. Damn, Simon Fuller, you really had a vision. So fun fact, I was like, wow, this is so fascinating. Like, who's the first ever Idol that there ever was? Well, his name was Will Young. He won the 2001 inaugural series of the ITV talent contest, Pop Idol. And you guys might remember him. He came out with this double A-sided debut single, Anything Is Possible, Evergreen. Those were the names of the two songs. They were released 2 weeks after the show's finale, and they became the fastest selling debut single in the UK.
That anything is possible, possible, 'cause you believe in me.
I don't remember that one. Do you know this one?
It never made it across the pond to me,
No.
but 2001, 2002, we were deep in Britney, Backstreet, and listening to his songs, they were just more like adult contemporary vibes. Just
Not
for
our
us.
speed at the time.
No, there were no Swedish beats to be found. So you could miss us with that. But yeah, Will Young, iconic. So another fun fact, the franchise may have never even come to America in the first place if it weren't for Rupert Murdoch's daughter. So in 2001, Simon Fuller, Simon Cowell, and a third TV producer named Simon Jones, yes, that's 3 Simons behind this one show, attempted to sell the Pop Idol format to the US, but the networks were like, they channeled their inner Randy Jackson and said, it's going to be a no from me, dog. But then Rupert Murdoch, who was the head of Fox's parent company, was persuaded to buy the series by his daughter, Elizabeth, who had seen Pop Idol, the British version. You know, sometimes girls just get the job done, okay? So apparently these execs wanted to switch up the format. And old Robbie Murdoch was like, nah, we have to keep it the way it is. But what was a unique challenge for them to figure out is, unlike England, that's all in one time zone, they could all vote the same time, the same day. America's a huge country with multiple time zones, so it just wasn't practical for the entire country to vote in the same time period. So they added this half-hour results show the day following the performance show. That was something unique to the American Idol format.
Yeah, and let's talk about this revolutionary aspect of American Idol. It wasn't just about finding talent, it was letting America decide who would win. And we had this whole voting system, unlike many previous talent shows where judges or producers had the final say. Idol pioneered mass phone voting in the United States. You guys, do you remember doing this? I know Kelsey and I did this. Viewers called dedicated toll-free numbers assigned to each contestant, often facing, busy signals due to the overwhelming volume. Oh my God, I don't know the last time I've heard a busy signal. Fox partnered with AT&T as the official voting sponsor, and voting windows were typically open for 2 hours after the performance shows. The show didn't release exact vote counts until the finale, creating weekly suspense. This democratic approach to star making was groundbreaking television and helped create the invested fan base that made the show such a ratings monster. So, while America ultimately decided the winners, it was our beloved panel of judges who first narrowed down the talent pool and whose opinions often swayed viewers' votes. Let's meet this infamous trio responsible for delivering those memorable critiques, the first being Simon Cowell. Now, he had a ton of success as an English record executive, producer, and talent scout in the 80s and 90s. He was also part of the judging panel of the British reality competitions Pop Idol and the X Factor UK. As we also know, he was the manager for Five, the band from the UK, and worked with Andreas Carlsson when the group was recording what would become NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. Make sure to check out our interview with Andreas to learn more about that if you haven't. But fun fact, Simon was initially offered the job of showrunner for American Idol, but turned it down. I don't know exactly what a showrunner is. Do you?
They're like a producer type role, I think.
It's like a behind the scenes kind of.
Yeah, it's behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's not on camera.
I honestly don't know if the first season of American Idol would have hit as hard as it did without having Simon Cowell's blistering critiques interspersed in that. But he was a part of the show until season 9. So he has a good 9 seasons under his belt.
So I just Googled it, and here's what a TV showrunner does. They're the creative and managerial leader of a TV series. So they're like the head writer and executive producer. They oversee all aspects of the show, from script development and writing to casting, budgeting, and maintaining the overall vision.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I think he picked correctly, being the face, coming out from behind that, he was this hard ass producer, and now he's stepping into the limelight as a talent in his own right. And I mean, I had never heard of Simon, even though I obviously was a huge fan of Five at the time. I did not know what a producer was. He was like the hard ass. He was stone faced. He delivered super harsh critique. And it was usually pretty funny because a lot of these contestants were truly delusional. And they really needed to hear that they would not make it in this industry. That sounds really harsh, but someone needed to tell them, like, you could find something else to do and be really successful at it. Like, don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Like, just pursue another passion. And I do believe that that is a gift for some of these people who may have been like blinded by their own dreams of stardom. And we'll talk through some of his most iconic zingers later in this episode, but he was like the villain, the low stakes villain that America could really rally behind. And he was British. So it gave us like someone for us all to love to hate together.
He did the dirty work. The next judge was a lot more favored, I think, by America, the wonderful Paula Abdul. Now, before joining American Idol, Paula herself was a legend in her own right. She was a singer, dancer, performer. She was a choreographer. She did some music videos for Janet Jackson, and she topped the Billboard charts with her own singles, Straight Up.
Straight up now, tell me, do you really want to love me forever? Oh, oh, oh.
And Opposites Attract.
We come together, 'cause opposites attract.
Just to name a few.
I remember people being like starstruck when they would walk in the room and see Paula. They'd be like, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. And I remember being like, who is Paula?
I
Like,
know.
how do all these people know her? But she was like that girl. Like, she is iconic. I also remember her outfits being crazy. She had a lot of like hat work going on and like billowy, piratey inspired like blouses.
Yes, I can picture a white pirate billow blouse.
Almost
For
like
sure.
Austin Powers vibes.
Yeah, the fashion was insane. And Paula was there almost as long as Simon. She left after season 8. Post-show, she continued doing her choreography. She also appeared as a judge on The X Factor, Live to Dance, So You Think You Can Dance, and I didn't even know this show existed, The Masked Dancer. That's crazy.
Is that like The Masked Singer?
I guess.
Oh my God, they got to stop with these masks. It's crazy.
No more s'more masks. I can't take it. Like gators and just absurd things. But okay, our third and final judge, Randy Jackson. Now, prior to hosting American Idol, just like our other judges, Randy was a legend in his own right. He had a music career of his own. He played bass guitar as a sideman for the likes of Journey and Richard Marx, while also serving as an A&R executive at Columbia Records and MCA Records. He gave us the incredible catchphrases, "It's a no from me, dog,"
It's definitely a no for me, dog.
and "Pitchy."
It was still a little pitchy in the middle there. I just had some little pitchy moments in it, but it's okay for me, really. There was some pitchy problems in there. I don't know.
Randy would go on to judge for 12 seasons, so he, out of the 3 of our judges, made it the furthest.
Pitchy was like his number one thing that he would say, like, you're a little pitchy.
Oh, that
And
was his
I remember being
critique.
like, what is pitchy? Like, I didn't know what a pitch was at that point. And it just kind of seemed like a nothing feedback,
Mm.
But he was a personal favorite of mine. He wasn't all nice, but he wasn't all mean either. He was like the perfect middle of the road. He delivered the kind of constructive criticism that some of them needed without totally defeating them. But then sometimes he did really lay the hammer down when these people weren't getting it. And he was not afraid to say to their face, like, you're never going to be Jello. Like, get out of here.
Well, that's what we needed Randy for.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened when all these 3 judges joined together on the panel. Well, they definitely had their own chemistry, and I think they struck that sort of strong balance of mean, middle of the road, and nice. But it's worth noting, when I say chemistry, what I'm really talking about is the flirting between Simon and Paula that seemed to become its own little side quest of the show. This was like a huge will they, won't they, and they really started leaning into it hard in the subsequent seasons. I just remember thinking as like a baby 6th grader, like maybe if Simon and Paula dated, like she could make him nicer.
Right? She'd sprinkle some of her fairy dust on him, like her niceness.
Exactly. Oh my God. They just had like such fun chemistry and such a good back and forth. All the judges seemed so comfortable with each other. They would make fun of each other and just like play around. And that made it really fun. And sometimes that was like the most like levity we'd have in between like all these auditions. There's this one audition where this guy is singing to Paula, "You're once, twice, 3 times a lady." Like he's laying it on all this cheese to Paula. And Simon starts eating a chip super loud. And Paula just whacks him in the chest.
Oh my gosh.
You're once, twice, 3 times a lady, and I love you.
It made me laugh out loud. I was like, wow, this was like fun, lighthearted TV. And they just had such a great rapport. I loved watching them.
See, I don't remember the flirting element at all. Like I had no idea there was like a maybe it just went over my head. I don't know.
She would definitely call him out and be like, you don't need to be so rude. She's like, you can deliver tough criticism, but the way you're delivering it is like horrific. Like work on yourself. But then they would like just really, wow. I wonder if they ever hooked up. I need to Google it.
Someone tell us. Let us know. While we have our Fab 3, what's interesting is that there was allegedly supposed to be 4 judges at the desk, and that was the Pop Idol format in the UK. So according to this book, American Idol, The Untold Story by Idol reporter Richard Rushfield, when casting began in 2001 for the show, the original idea was to fill the judges' bench with 2 music executives. So we have Simon and Randy, 1 performer, Paula, and then, as was the case in Britain's show, Pop Idol, 1 media insider. So like a media journalist or a radio host, which I could see making sense. And apparently that 4th spot was supposed to go to a, quote, flamboyant and edgy young DJ Stryker, end quote. And apparently, according to Richard, the deal was ready to go with Stryker, but at the last minute, he pulled out, citing what he would later term image concerns over appearing on what he no doubt considered a cheesy singing contest that might damage his rock credentials. So, with no time left to recast, he pulled out last minute. The Idol powers that be decided to just forge ahead with this 3-judge format and see what happens.
I think we agreed that 3 was the best because remember Cara DioGuardi when we read her book, that was the first time they tried 4 judges and she was like, it just wasn't working.
It was, not a good experience for her.
Well, let's talk about somebody else who, I mean, poor Stryker, that sucks. Like no one knows who Stryker is, but we all know who these judges are. Well, that leads us to somebody else who missed out on the multi-million-dollar franchise, one of the original hosts. This is like my fun fact. This is like something that I love to quiz people's pop culture knowledge on. I'm like, do you remember how many hosts American Idol has? And they're like, 1. I'm like, season 1 had 2 hosts. I mean, obviously Ryan Seacrest, he's undoubtedly the name, the face that comes to mind for most people when they think of the show. But American Idol season 1 had a second host named Brian Dunkelman. I remember Brian as being super sarcastic and almost like making fun of Ryan a lot. Like Ryan almost kind of gave me the vibes of being like this pretty boy, like goody two shoes, like always smiling. It was kind of cheesy, just like really laying into the cheese. But Brian, who had this background as a comedian, was kind of like rolling his eyes a little bit. I liked their dynamic. And TBH, I was team Brian. Like I thought his humor was a little bit more funny versus like the super white smile, like blinding highlights, Ryan Seacrest. But apparently, after season 1 ended, it was reported that Brian quit. And that was kind of the narrative that I had believed all of these years. But after digging a little bit, I found that some news outlets later on said that there was a rumor that he was going to be fired if he hadn't quit earlier. So I think a lot of people like myself believe like this guy just made the worst mistake of his life leaving this show, like leaving all that money and fame on the table. But numerous Idol staffers eventually would admit that Brian basically just submitted his resignation right before news of his firing could reach him. So like, you can't get fired if you quit first, I think he was trying to leave with a little bit of his pride.
Well, I think this is why we didn't get picked for Pop Culture Jeopardy, honestly, because I have no recollection of the second host. Would have failed your pop culture quizzing. But I just want to draw attention to the fact that there are 3 Simons in this picture, a Brian and a Ryan. Like, what? You can't make that up. I wonder if everybody was just like calling for the wrong person all the time. Just hilarious. But let's move on to the audition process. Now, while Brian and Ryan were handling the hosting duties and keeping the show moving, behind the scenes was a massive operation designed to find America's next singing sensation. Let's break down exactly how this talent finding machine worked, from the very first hello to those nerve-wracking moments in front of our 3 judges. So the initial age limit to try out for American Idol was 16 to 24 in the first 3 seasons, which is crazy because I feel like In later seasons, they have really old people, they have really young people. It just seems like a lot more diverse age group than these 8 years that they slotted here. But for the first 18 seasons, contestants went through at least 3 rounds of auditions, 3 sets of cuts. The first was a brief audition with a few other contestants in front of selectors, which included at least one of the show's producers. Only a few hundred people made it past the preliminary round of auditions, and most cities saw more than 10,000 hopeful contestants. Oh my God, that must have just been exhausting on the other side of the table going through that. But those successful contestants then went on to sing in front of producers, where more would end up being cut. Only then would they be able to proceed to audition in front of our judges, which is the only audition stage shown on television. And obviously, not all of them made television either.
Right. The way it was edited, I definitely thought that Randy, Simon, and Paula were sitting there watching every single audition with those giant glasses of Coca-Cola.
I know. I was like, wow, this must be so hard for them and exhausting. Like, they must be there for hours. But no, they saw the best ones and the worst ones, probably.
Right. I remember being like really disillusioned with the fact that they would let those bad people through. But then I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, it makes
For
you
good
know.
television.
It makes good television, but it also was like, I wonder if they just like let the people who have a good story through.
True. I think definitely that happens. And so that round gets to, audition in front of the judges, and those that get through the judges were then sent to Hollywood. So between 10 and 60 people in each city may make it to Hollywood. So still, we have about 150 to 200 people that are making it to Hollywood, which just feels like a lot. In the audition rounds for season 1, 121 contestants were selected from the about 10,000 who attended the auditions. These were cut to 30 for the semifinal, with 10 going on to the finals.
So I think we can all agree that the best part of American Idol and what probably got us hooked on it in the first place were these auditions. Some people were incredible. They raised the hair on your arms, and others were a little embarrassing, and some became instant memes. This was truly reality TV gold. From, the talented underdogs to the delusional dreamers, we want to talk through some of those breakthrough auditions that we remember from season 1. We have to start with Kelly Clarkson, who auditioned in Dallas.
Fancy cars that go very fast, they never last, no.
She was just a little baby 20-year-old, and we learned that Kelly even made her own outfit. She made a top out of a pair of jeans.
Is that a skirt? This used to be her pants.
This used to be my pants.
This thing.
I feel like it's like bobbing in the 3D.
That's cute.
I know. I'm gonna be a fashion designer if this doesn't work out.
Iconic. What stood out to me, aside from her amazing voice and just her really cute personality, was she kept saying cool beans. Like, I wonder if that was like her nervous tick.
Cool beans.
And very memorably in her audition, she hit it off with the judges right away. And she switched places with Randy at the judges' table. She was like, you know what? You should audition. I mean, the balls. We got a bit out of her and an amazing song.
I remember that one. That one definitely sticks out to me.
And Simon says, it's a yes from me under one condition. You need to tell Ryan that he has to redo his highlights. And so Kelly walks out with her little, they get like that golden ticket to Hollywood. And she runs out and she goes, Ryan, you have to redo your highlights. And Ryan's just like, wait, like clearly so thrown off and like had no idea what was going on in there. And he's just like, wait, what's wrong with my highlights? Like Simon and Brian definitely kind of like teamed up and made fun of Ryan a little bit, which was hilarious. So the next audition we want to talk about is Cassandra, who auditioned in LA.
Gitchy, ya, ta, ta. Gitchy, ya, hee.
I will say, LA gave us like the craziest auditions. Those people had the most, I guess we could call it moxie, charisma, but also the most crazy. So before Cassandra, they had just given 2 yeses to auditions. And they're like, 2 yeses, you're going to Hollywood. And Simon's like, Cassandra, we're finally getting somewhere. We finally are saying yes to people. It's been a long day. We're counting on you to keep it going. And she's like, of course I will. You can count on me. She starts singing Lady Marmalade and he stops her immediately and he's like, girl, you suck. And she's like, I'm sorry. It just kind of killed me how they would react when they were getting this harsh feedback. And this one stood out to me because Randy was like, you should really take more lessons and keep performing. And Simon cut Randy off and he was like, respectfully, don't waste your money. You do not have a voice. You are not talented. And this poor girl walks out crying. Like, I felt really sad for her. But at the same time, this was when we would see the judges kind of disagree with each other and go at it. So it made it more memorable. Now we have to talk about one of the most iconic contestants who, when I started watching some of the old clips, I instantly remembered her. Stephanie Sugarman. And she is a cheese salesperson in LA.
Okay, what do you do?
I'm in marketing for cheese. I sell provolone and mozzarella.
We're in 6th grade watching this. These looked like adults to us at the time. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a job you could have, like just being a cheese salesperson. Yeah. So not only did I get to hear some great music when I watched American Idol, I could learn about potential career paths for myself. So Stephanie sells cheese. And that's not even the most interesting part of her audition. She basically questions if the judges are even qualified to be giving her advice. Let's be real, her audition was not great. I'm so sorry, Stephanie. And she's like, I think you're lying through your teeth. And Simon is just so funny. He's like, please believe us, Stephanie. You didn't leave the cheese company, right? Tell them the good news that you're going to be back on Monday.
Oh my God, brutal.
And Stephanie is so wound up. She ends up leaving the audition room, kind of like telling them off, like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Y'all crazy. And she ends up getting so amped up as she's talking to Brian and Ryan, like debriefing. She ends up going back into the audition room in front of the judges and they're just rolling their eyes. And she basically starts singing again and auditions again. And they're just like laughing at her. And Randy, this is when we start to see the spicy side of Randy. He just goes, see you later, Stephanie. You won't be coming to Hollywood. And then this very hilarious part happens.
You won't be coming to Hollywood. See you later.
I will be coming to Hollywood and I'll see you and my millions are going to be there. Thank you.
Stephanie was not going to Hollywood.
I just love when we get someone being like, I'm going to Hollywood. And then Ryan's voiceover, Stephanie was not going to
Indeed,
Hollywood.
she would not be going to Hollywood.
He's like the voice of God in this. So throughout the season, Simon delivered some real harsh advice, like this.
My advice would be if you want to pursue a career in the music business, don't.
And this.
When you entered this competition, did you really believe that you could become what you're standing on now, the American Idol?
Yes, sir.
Well, then you're deaf.
And this.
I mean, out of 10, what would you give yourself?
I'll give myself a 10.
Well, I'd give you 1.
And finally, this.
Well, this is a pen, not a magic wand. You have to start with a modicum of talent.
We have a couple more auditions that we need to talk through. The next one is Mary Iannicelli in LA. Randy delivered some really rough feedback to her, and she said this in response.
Well, listen, sweetheart, I don't really care about your opinion. I really could care less because I'm 22 years old and I'm beautiful and I can sing. So I really don't care what you think.
So if you think that it's only Simon who's being spicy to the contestants, you are wrong. The contestants got spicy right back. I cannot imagine speaking to anybody that way, let alone like Simon Cowell. And she basically goes, you have my number. You can give me a call if you change your mind. Ciao. And walks off. And I'm like, this had to have been staged. Like she had to have thought that like an acting job would have come out of this. I can't imagine the arrogance. Okay, the next one, she's real iconic. It's Tamika Bush. I am obsessed with Tamika.
Everybody's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to.
She really went on to become like an icon of the season 1 auditions for how she rebutted the judges' criticisms. She told Randy that she sings better than he does. And Simon kept pronouncing her name incorrectly. And I loved how she corrects him, which she absolutely should have done. And he should have known better to say her name correctly.
Tamika.
It's Tamika.
Tamika, listen to me. Tamika.
Not Tamika.
Tamika.
He's like, Tamika. She goes in on Simon. And honestly, she kind of has a point. Okay, just a couple more that we need to talk through. The next is Jennifer Amaro, who auditioned in Chicago. She was only 16 at the time of her audition. She walked in looking like a Christina impersonator.
If you wanna be with me, make your wish come true.
And Simon's feedback was scathing, to say the least.
Well, Jennifer, here's a new word. That was extraordinary.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, extraordinarily bad.
Okay, just 3 more. Jim Verreros. He would go on to be in the top 10. He auditioned in Chicago. He was only 19 at the time. And I remember he stood out to me because both of his parents are deaf. And he was saying his biggest dream was for his parents to hear him sing. And I remember everyone crying when he would perform. And he would sign his entire performance so his parents could watch.
Moonlight kisses seem to cool in the warmth of the sun.
So I thought that was very cool to see the sign language. Okay, Elias, our next one. He was 19 years old at the time of his audition in New York City.
Oops, I did it again. I play with your heart. Got lost in this game.
Oh my God, Mary, you'd love this guy. He came dressed in a top hat, a suit, and as he's performing Britney Spears, he is stripping down to a t-shirt that has all of the judges' faces all over it. And the judges are just cracking up. And he actually did have a really good voice, but he just had this charisma, this stage presence about him. And Simon said sometimes personality does count more than singing ability. And they sent him to Hollywood unanimously. It was just so fun. He was like picked up by Ryan and like carried out of the room. Like it was just so fun to see those reactions, those human interactions with everyone sort of lightening up and feeling the levity. Finally, we have to talk about Justin Guarini, who would go on to become the top 2 finalist. He was 23 years old at the time of his audition in New York City.
Don't you know that I sit around with my head hanging down?
And Simon, at this point in the show, admits that the American talent was better than the English talent.
Whoa, that's big.
Right?
All right. So after witnessing the roller coaster of emotions that was the audition process, now we follow the journey of those talented few who managed to impress the judges enough to move forward. The finalist journey wasn't without its own drama and surprises. 9th place finalist that Kelsey just mentioned, Jim Verreros, was the first openly gay contestant on the show. His sexual orientation was revealed on his blog. However, it was removed during the competition after a request from the show producers over concerns that it might be unfairly influencing votes. One semifinalist, Delano Cagnolati, was disqualified for lying to evade the show's age limit. Now, this is a scandal. He's 29, so if you remember, the age limit was 16 to 24. So he was a solid 5 years outside of the age range. So he was booted off after a background check revealed that he was 29 years old, not 23, as he originally told producers. And he had doctored his own driver's license when he applied to be on the show. That is commitment. In addition, one of the early favorites, Tamira Gray, was eliminated at the top 4, the first of several shock eliminations that were going to be repeated in later seasons. We see this a few times, but people were devastated to see her go. Finally, Christina Christian was hospitalized before the top 6 results show due to chest pains and palpitations, and she was eliminated while she was in the hospital. That is brutal. Honestly, this show would give me chest pains and palpitations too. I cannot blame her.
Back then, obviously, all the tabloids were like toxic and like fat shaming everyone. And I remember Kelly Clarkson saying she went like from a size 6 to a size 2 because of the stress.
The stress, of
the show.
Oh my God, brutal. So something I particularly loved about American Idol and what made the show particularly compelling was watching the contestants navigate these weekly themed challenges that push them outside of their comfort zones. Season 1 established the format of themed performance shows, though they weren't as elaborate as later seasons would become. They got real crazy as time went on, but contestants tackled Motown hits, they performed songs from their birth years, and covered tracks from big-name artists. Kelly Clarkson's rendition of Aretha Franklin's Respect,
All I'm asking is for a little respect when you get home. All right, when you get home.
and her emotional performance of Stuff Like That There,
I want a pet and there's a spoon and there's some happy honeymoon and there's some stuff like that there.
really showed her versatility. These performances weren't just entertainment, though. They revealed which contestants could adapt and which were more one-dimensional, often influencing audience votes more than the judges' comments. Like, could you put one in a shoebox, or like, were they able to be flexible and try different genres? And we know Kelly Clarkson, with her TV show, she performs all different kinds of genres. You could not put that woman in a box if you wanted to. So she thrived in that environment. But behind the scenes, contestants battled for preferred song selections, as apparently getting stuck with a lesser-known track could spell elimination regardless of talent.
Yeah, when they had a shitty song, it was really rough for them. And I remember being like annoyed at the time. Like, why are they only singing like old songs?
No.
Like, I wanted more top 40 hits, but it was so wholesome. It offered more generation appeal the way they did it. Like, I get it. But I also remember reading some articles back then questioning, if this formula is going to grow stale. Because, like, let's be real, how many times can they sing KC and the Sunshine Band on the show? And then they're expected to go get a top Billboard hit, right?
Right.
Well, let's talk about the finale that had my middle school divided. You were Team Justin or Team Kelly, and there was no in between. Mary, who are you?
Kelly all the way. Who
Oh my
are
God,
you?
girl power. Obviously,
Yeah.
I wanted to be Kelly Clarkson so bad. I loved her chunky highlights on her album cover, Thankful.
Oh, yes.
Obsessed with her. So during the original run of American Idol on Fox, the finale week used to be a 1 hour long final performance night. And then there was a 2-hour last episode of the season that has the reveal of the winner. And they're both broadcast live in the US in both the Eastern and Central time zones. They were really dragging it out for us. You had to clear your schedule like all week for this shit. And what's so funny is like I was so certain that Justin Guarini was going to win because he was just like one of the early favorites. I remember everyone was like, Paula is in love with him and wants to run away with him. And Kelly Clarkson was just like initially not like this big contender. But as we know, Kelly won and she performed the song, what would go on to become known as like the coronation song. Like every season they wrote a new original song that the winner would get to own and like release it after. And I think season 1 was the most iconic, A Moment Like This.
A moment like this, some people wait a lifetime.
I mean, holy shit. This single went on to break a 38-year-old record held by the Beatles for the biggest leap to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. I just can't imagine like a more fairy tale-like ending for this show that promises to make the American Idol the next big thing. I mean, what a moment.
A moment like this.
That was the first song I ever slow danced to with a boy at a school dance.
I remember that.
It was a big moment for me.
Ooh.
Thank you, Kelly, for that. And if she never won, I wouldn't have gotten that moment. So let's talk about Justin. We kind of like never heard from him again. So this was like a huge mess up. This was basically a case study for future number 2 second placers, runner-ups, if you will. It was a huge mess up by whomever was managing his career that he did not release any song immediately after the show. And he is the only runner-up of American Idol not to do so. Because like, why wouldn't you try to capitalize on that moment?
I wonder if like all the runner-ups learned from his error.
Absolutely. He became
Yeah.
a case study of what not to do.
Gosh, terrible. Well, what did our queen actually win? Like, you win American Idol, so what does that mean? So when Kelly Clarkson was crowned the first American Idol, she won more than just that title. The prize package included a $1 million recording contract with RCA Records, which was then part of the BMG family. But this just like wasn't handed over as a check. It was structured as a $250,000 advance, with the remainder paid in installments as she delivered albums. Kelly also received management representation from 19 Entertainment, and her coronation single, as Kelsey said, was fast-tracked to radio. Unlike later seasons, the first season's prize didn't include a car or other major promotional deals, though these would become standard in future seasons. Kelly's phenomenal success ultimately far outpaced the initial prize value, but this first contract helped launch what would become a multi-platinum Grammy-winning career, which is crazy. So, the confetti comes down, she wins, she gets her prizes. What's next? So, following the season finale, the top 10 contestants were not done with their Idol journey quite yet. The first ever American Idol's live tour kicked off in October 2002 and visited 30 cities across America. This tour gave fans a chance to see their favorites perform live without that, pressure of competition. And it served multiple purposes for the franchise. It extended the Idol brand beyond the TV season and provided additional income and exposure for the contestants that didn't take that number one spot. Kelly headlined, of course, but audiences came in droves to see Justin, Tamira, and other fan favorites. The tour's success established a template that would be followed for years to come, with each season's finalists hitting the road after the TV finale, sometimes playing to sold-out arenas. Kelsey, did you ever go to an American Idol tour?
I feel like I did.
Really?
Because I remember seeing Ruben Studdard and Clay Aiken live.
Oh, that would have been so cute.
I loved Ruben.
And their dynamic was just to die for.
Oh, and I had Clay CD Invisible as like my frickin' jam.
Shout out to Jade, the ultimate Clay Aiken stan.
So we have a hit television show. We have a new pop superstar, plus a dozen other now household names on tour. I mean, this show just turned out to be so much more than good TV. My personal favorite thing to come from American Idol Season 1, besides Kelly Clarkson's whole discography, is From Justin to Kelly, which was released in 2003. This was a motion picture movie where they meet on like spring break and have like a bunch of dance-offs. Everybody hated it, but I loved it, and I secretly really wanted them to fall in love.
I know, I thought it was kind of happening.
I think we all did. We all were like rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you?
So I totally forgot this. It just wasn't on my radar for whatever reason. But in 2003, they also debuted a spin-off show called American Juniors, and this was also hosted by Ryan Seacrest. So the goal of this American Junior show was not just to find a single winner, though. It was to create a group of 5 of the contestants. So basically to create a new band. So it kind of more was like the S Club search, which produced S Club Juniors. So again, we're looking across the pond for inspo for more singing competition shows. So the first season brought us singing group American Juniors. And you may recognize one of these famous names, Lucy Hale, was in this group. I had no idea that that's like how she got her start.
Me neither. This was off my radar as well.
Another fun pop culture Jeopardy fact. So the group disbanded not too long after they were formed in 2005, after their self-titled studio album generated lackluster sales. So the show only went on to last one season, but cool they tried it, and cool that Lucy Hale is super famous now. So the first season was this lightning in a bottle, right? Kelly Clarkson has since become one of the most successful Idol contestants internationally in the show's history. But let's talk about the show itself. By 2004, it had become the most watched show on American television, and it held this position for 7 consecutive seasons until 2011. That's crazy. Season 2 only got bigger than season 1. The show improved by more than 50% in every ratings measure over its first season. That's like unheard of.
Wow.
So just for comparison's sake, the second season averaged 21.7 million total viewers compared to 12.7 million for the first season. And for the season 2 finale, more than 38 million people watched Ruben Studdard beat Clay Aiken. Like, that's crazy. There are no moments like that where all those people are watching the same thing at the same time anymore.
Unless it's like the Super Bowl.
Even then, it's like second screening. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess the Super Bowl is really like the last great American, like, shared cultural experience. Maybe like Coachella.
I mean, I didn't watch it.
Oh, well, was anybody else streaming Charlie XCX?
I'm sure a lot of people were. I
think you're right. It's like the Super Bowl, but we used to have much more shared cultural events where we would all like unite and come together and like watch the same thing. It makes me sad we don't have that anymore. So I went back and read some news articles from 2002, 2003, just to see what people were saying about it at the time. And Craig Marks, he's the editor of Blender, which is a music magazine. He was quoted in this New York Times article that was following the second season finale. He said, you know, he loved the show, but the music is so hollow. It's awful. Like, it's just so wholesome. It has no edge, though. It's just like edge-free music. And he's saying that basically it's a risky dance when you are trying to appeal to such a wide audience that you are weeding out performers who are not, to use his words, blandly acceptable. But he said the saving grace of the show is Simon Cowell because, to use his words, quote, the show would collapse under the weight of its kisses and platitudes if not for him. You can see that he sits there some nights desperate to add a little rock energy to the stage, which I totally understand and totally agree with. Again, like, I don't want to see like just a million Casey and the Sunshine performances. Right. So in the same article, Joe Levy, who was at the time the assistant managing editor for music at Rolling Stone, he said, you know, the British charts are always full of treacly pop music. So like American Idol comes by it honestly, like this cheesy music is in its roots. And he says this came at a time when some music fans wanted to eradicate what he called the teen pop trend. Quote, as personified in stars like Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys, the genre seems to be hitting what he called a second wave. The proof, he said, was that the hit album now out from Hilary Duff, the teenage star of the Lizzie McGuire series on the Disney Channel, and the success of Thankful, the album by Kelly Clarkson, who won the first Idol, which reached #1 in its first week in release. So even if the teenage boy who loves the show now thinks it gets old soon, he has a little sister who's ready to jump in and continue watching it. So I thought it was interesting. We learned more about the cycle of pop music through this show. So first season, over 110 million votes were cast. By the 10th season, 750 million votes.
Crazy.
I mean, it's just bananas. And now the show is back. They took a little hiatus. They switched networks. They were on Fox. Now they're on ABC. And it's back for its 23rd season with a son of a Backstreet Boy. We've come full circle.
And what is it, like Lionel, Luke Bryan, and Katy Perry?
I think Katie's out and now it's Carrie Underwood.
Oh, Carrie Underwood.
I believe she's making it like way more religious. Like I was reading an article about how she's like really behind the scenes pulling to make the songs more religious based.
That is a very interesting twist.
It is.
It sure is. Well, did you guys watch American Idol? Do you remember the moments that we talked about tonight? If so, let us know. Slide into our DMs at When They Popped Pod on Instagram, and make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Rate us 5 stars. Leave us a review. We might just read it on our next episode and shout you out. Thank you so much for listening. We love you guys.
Love you. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.